Welcome to Kismet Tech Talk, your monthly rendezvous with the latest in disinfection and antimicrobial technologies. I'm Dr. Christina Drake, your host for today's episode. Join us as we dive deep into the science, innovations, and applications shaping the future of clean and safe environments. Hi, I'm Christina Drake, the founder and CEO of Kismet Technologies. Here with us today for the special interview is Patty Olinger, and she has an exemplary background in biosecurity and we really want to just ask you questions today about your prior experience, learn from you you've seen things in academia, you've seen things at a global level, like really being able to bring to bear like your prior experience and help us to understand, what's important in disinfection. So I wanted to start by just having you tell us about your background to help the audience understand where you've been.
Okay. Well, I started out as a bench biochemist in a pharmaceutical company, the Upjohn company, and Upjohn, through several mergers, became Pfizer. And I left Pfizer in 2006 and I went into then academia. But while I was at Pfizer, I actually left the lab and became the head of research safety for that site, and specifically in biosafety and chemical safety for laboratories. And I had the best of both worlds. I had pharma, human health, and also animal health. So I had that look at more of a One Health kind of perspective. I left pharmaceutical industry and went into academia, Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, our campus literally surrounded the Center for Disease Control. And so we had collaboration there, and that also included Emory Healthcare. And in 2014, a lot of people are aware that while there, we had the Ebola patients. We had 4 Ebola patients in 2014, and I was part of Team Ebola, providing that support from an environmental standpoint, the biosafety side, and just protection, personal protective equipment, working with infection prevention and the physicians and the nursing staff. Very challenging. Mm-hmm. I made a complete change in 2019, and I ended up leaving that world, and I went into the trade association world, and of all things, it was the cleaning industry. It was ISSA, the International Sanitary Supply Association, and I led a division called GBAC, or the Global Biorisk Advisory Council. Timing was very interesting if you think about that. So we were looking at a lot of training programs, very eclectic training programs, kind of niche for high risk situations. I wrote an article in 2020 January that said a pandemic was coming and we're not prepared. And I really was looking at that frontline worker. I mean, we have a tendency to think of biosafety and biocontainment in those containment labs, so biosafety level 3s and 4s and in healthcare. We don't think about it out in the common places that we live every day. And I've been a proponent that, in given talks that, biosafety really applies to everybody.
Yeah.
And we're not prepared if we had a pandemic. Well, a couple weeks later, we had a pandemic that got announced. Immediately, everybody shut down and then started thinking about reopening because they figured it was going to be just a couple weeks. And I wrote GBAC Star Accreditation, where we accredited, we worked with 4,000 facilities worldwide, and it was everybody. It was the, sports arenas and hospitality, Hyatt hotels, for example, convention centers, trying to keep people still open.
Yeah.
And so applying that process of, how do we stay open? How do we protect people? How do we protect the environment? Mm-hmm. And how do we clean and sanitize and disinfect appropriately to keep things safe?
Yeah.
I had a lot of interesting, I would say, challenges.
Yeah, I think just being, part of that Ebola, to me, that's insane. I feel like you should write a book about that, and I'm looking forward to it when you get around to that. But in terms of lessons learned, I would be interested, in terms of infectious disease outbreak, lessons learned both from your time dealing, with Ebola when you're at Emory, but also what you learned when you went outside of that to GBAC and started seeing, infectious disease outbreak from the standpoint of a pandemic. So, right, you have more local and global, and just kind of wanting to glean some expertise from you on what you learned.
Well, one thing that you learn is when the risk of the organism, like Ebola, when it starts going up, people pay a lot more attention to detail.
Yeah.
As you can imagine. And it wouldn't matter if it was waste management, how you clean and sanitize. They're willing to pay more attention to things.
Yeah.
But on our day-to-day things, what we're finding, whether it was in healthcare or what we saw during my time at GBAC, was that people really didn't take the time to do something as simple as read the label of the chemistry that they're utilizing. Yeah. And their thought is you just take any cloth. It didn't matter what cloth. You took a spray bottle of something and you'd spray it and you just wipe really quick.
Yeah.
And so what we were finding is that, number one, something as simple as what you and I know as dwell time, nobody even knew what that was.
Yeah.
And so dwell time meaning how long that specific chemistry needed to stay on the surface to be effective.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of human error. I did a video one time about how Patty screws up her microfiber. Because I didn't realize at the time that it was different than, I just figured it was cloth. I didn't realize it was plastic. I didn't realize a lot of things about it. And, people just don't understand that there are differences. And if you don't take the time to train your people and then give them the time to do, the cleaning and sanitizing and disinfecting correctly, it's not as effective as people think.
Yeah. And then I guess looking out from, because in those situations, right, it can potentially be a life or death, call. So moving to maybe less scary territory, let's say hospitality. From your time at GBAC, were there any lessons you learned there where, the stakes aren't quite as high, but, what are your takeaways in sort of those less life-threatening situations where disinfection is important?
So I'm also an ISO convener for the development of international standards on virus management for laboratories, and actually in the title it's other related industries. And so when I talk to somebody, and of course being from pharma for so many years, SOPs were a really big deal.
Yeah.
And you knew the difference between an SOP, an internal guideline, a guideline, because CDC puts out a lot of guidelines.
Yes.
Regulatory regulations, or standards. And most people don't understand what that means.
Yeah.
And then when they write something, they don't understand that if someone just picks up a paper and it's supposed to be a guideline, you want them to follow it.
Yes.
And you want it simple. And, that one of the things that I learned was that, we are trying to make science not scary. And especially let's face it, at the end of the day, they're dealing with chemicals to kill bacteria or inactivate viruses.
Yeah.
You want them to do it in a safe manner for them and the environment. And more is not always better.
Yeah. Because
a lot of times they'll want to spray or put more liquid on, the surface, and must be better then.
Yeah.
And that it's not always the harshest thing. I mean, you probably have worked with in research. I certainly did. And when I was in research and providing support to research organizations with formaldehyde, works really great. I mean, it disinfects, it sanitizes, it sterilizes, you name it. I don't want anybody working with formaldehyde if I can avoid it.
Yeah.
And so we learned a lot of lessons that way. The other thing was personal protective equipment. And in the Ebola, the doctors and the nurses, they were initially were a little offended that we were going to teach them how to put on and take off personal protective equipment. And we would use glow germ.
Yeah.
And fluoresce them, and then we'd have them take it off, and then showed that they just contaminated themselves. And then all of a sudden it became, okay, teach me what I need to do.
Yeah.
And something as simple as that, if done wrong can actually, even in hospitality or, restaurants or convention centers or sports arenas, can really have an impact.
Okay, so we talked about, putting more disinfectants, on a surface maybe doesn't actually do more. In the US, we buy and use more chemical disinfectant than any other country in the world, but we still have a pretty big problem with hospital-acquired infections. So I wonder if you'd talk to us a little bit about why that is, why just using more chemical disinfectant doesn't get you, to zero hospital-acquired infections.
Well, we've talked earlier and other conversations about, there's still a lot of human error in how we are disinfecting. And again, I think it comes down to training, education, but also pushing the envelope with new technologies. And a lot of times people are maybe not thinking about investing in those new technologies because it's just cleaning, right? It's just disinfecting. What's so difficult about that? But like you said, we're still seeing high rates of infection. We're still seeing in sports arenas with, our wrestlers with, MRSA on their skin. And we're still seeing in agriculture, fear of avian influenza and, African swine fever. Those things are still happening.
Yep.
And so we need to step away and rethink how we are disinfecting and work with the people that are charged with, doing the cleaning, doing the disinfecting so that they're properly trained, properly protected, and understand how to use the chemistries that they're using.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, we are so excited that you are an advisor for us here at Kismet Technologies. And I'd like to hear from your point of view, kind of the opportunities for our products to help make a difference when it comes to, infection prevention and biosecurity in general.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm really excited to be here with Kismet as well. I mean, being an advisor for Kismet, I learn as much, I hope, that you get from me. I think I learned more. But during the pandemic, everybody wants to find something that we were looking at, okay, residual. Is there a residual that can be put on surfaces that is safe and that is also effective?
Yeah.
And we would find things or we would see things that worked really well in a petri dish. But, if as that surface gets dirty, the bacteria and the virus can't get to it. And so it doesn't work as effectively.
Yeah.
And what we're seeing with the Kismet technology is that you've broken that code, and the ability to put it on a surface and to continually have, results that show that it's working. It doesn't negate, unfortunately, it doesn't negate for the people out there, the business owners are sitting there going, oh, I don't have to clean now.
Yeah.
You still have to clean because people are still bringing dirt in and still bringing grime in. And so cleaning in, interim disinfecting is still going to have to happen. But being able to be there, and especially when we start talking about hospital-acquired infections, where we know, as we know, wound care, hospital-acquired infections from just routine being in a hospital room to ORs is so important to make sure that all of the surfaces, I mean, you look at this and all the surfaces that are around, what Kismet technology does is gets us that step so that we are, really, in my opinion, ahead of the game in public health preparedness.
Yeah. There's an entire invisible world that we can't see
that
can wreak havoc. And I like to think of our product as, delving in that invisible world that we can't see to deal with those microbes. And I think that's a lot of the disconnect with disinfection because we can't see at that scale.
And you make a good point, because I think another thing that people, as far as lessons learned, is that we need to have better ways to measure and monitor what is clean. And then, again, those SOPs and those standards as to define how do we determine that what we've done is effective.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it needs to be more timely, as you very well know.
Yes. Well, great. And so, what are you looking forward to most, I guess, in the industry, like looking out over the next 5 years, right? You've been in the space for a while. In terms of just deep industry knowledge, you really know who the players are, what the challenges are. So what do you see as, I guess, opportunities, growth potential in the next 5 years in this industry?
It's a really good question. I'll take a step back and kind of look at it from a broader perspective, from a standpoint of, I think that overall the wellness industry in general, and that can be, healthcare, everybody is into that industry, whether they want to admit it or not.
Yeah.
We want to be healthy and we want to be well. And what we're finding is that, indoor air quality, I think that the pandemic really highlighted the fact that, yes, we need to pay more attention to indoor air quality because of infectious diseases, but there's so much more to it: asthma, allergies, as we've talked about earlier. Also, just CO2 levels and VOCs and particulates that come in. There's so much that we have learned and that we have yet to do. And hygiene and cleaning and what we use in those spaces is really important to understand. The other thing that I think is, a lot of people think that a disinfectant has to be a really bad chemical to be effective. And we're finding that there are technologies out there and chemistries out there that are safe, effective, and work. Yeah. And that's really important to understand and know. And we're starting to see AI come into play.
Yeah.
Mapping facilities or technologies that are just amazing, whether it's floor cleaning machinery or sprayers. And we've just seen so many technologies and learning what microfiber is and how to use it. And why it's important, and and how they interact together. And I think that's one of the keys. I don't think there's a silver bullet out there that's going to solve everybody's problem, but to see how these technologies, kind of like that Swiss cheese, I don't know if you've ever seen the Swiss cheese method or thought process of, as a bacteria or virus comes in, it has to go through the Swiss cheese with all the different things people put in place, reduces the potential of infection. Yeah. And I think that's where we're at today. And that's where I see in the next 5 years, we're going to see a lot of technology come through. We're going to see a lot of innovation, like Kismet. I think in the end result is better public health, global health, preparedness.
Yeah. All right. Final question. So, you're, like I said, you're, a subject matter expert, deep expertise when it comes to biosecurity and infection prevention. So what did we do to persuade you to come spend your valuable time with us here at Kismet? What was it that you saw as the potential there with our technology?
For one thing, it's like I have always in the that whole innovation. Okay. I love Gidget Gadget. I always say I'm a Gidget Gadget girl, for one thing. But I really believed that there had to be a technology out there, from a residual technology, that would work, would be safe and effective, and that would provide us a tool that would help protect people in the environment and animals and plants, as you know. And when you came to me and we started talking and I looked into it even more, it was like, no, I really want to be part of this and bring to, the public the awareness that, there are companies out there that are doing amazing things. And so that's why I'm proud and just excited, so excited to be here with you today. And for the long haul.
Well, thank you so much for your time and, sitting down to have this interview with us to help, educate our audience on just issues around disinfection and infection prevention. So we hope you learned something as part of that. And we want to thank Patty once again for spending her valuable time with us today. That's all for today's episode of Kismet Tech Talk. We hope you found our discussions insightful and inspiring. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to Kismet Tech Talk on your favorite podcast platform to stay updated on all our future episodes, and follow our main social media pages by searching for Kismet Technologies. Remember, knowledge is the key to creating cleaner and safer environments for all. Until next time, this is Dr. Christina Drake signing off. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.